You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. You wanted it, you got it. A radio program that helps teach you options trading inside and out, basic to complex. This is Options Bootcamp. Whether you want to learn how to protect your portfolio, generate income, or even become a master of volatility, the Options Bootcamp drill instructors will break it all down for you. Now, let's get you into peak options trading shape. Here are your Options Bootcamp drill instructors.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again for Education Wednesday here on the network. Yes, it's time once again for Options Bootcamp, the premier options education program on the planet. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. Don't forget the when you go into that website, theoptionsinsider.com. Otherwise, all bets are off. I don't know what you're going to get, and it's probably not good. Of course, if you want to get even more content in your lives, and hey, who can blame you? Only one place to go. When you're visiting that website, tack on a little bit of the old /pro, or if you're one of the cool kids, /secret club. And then you too can get access to 200 plus episodes of exclusive content waiting for you. The second you hit that button, it's all there waiting for you, as well as more coming literally every week. Live access to this, everything else we do. And also, that reminds me, it is time for our giveaway, because we are going to give away a pro trading crate for the month of June. Hard to believe, June already in the can. But it is. We are recording this the day after the big holiday here in the U.S., July 4th. You know, Options Bootcamp, always a very kind of July 4th kind of Flag Day, Memorial Day kind of show, because it always has the most, shall we say, celebratory music here on the old network. But before I give away that crate, let me welcome on my compatriot, my partner in all things Options Bootcamp crime, the black-hatted one himself, fresh, or should I say maybe a little worse for wear from his big retreat, Mr. Dan Passarelli from Market Taker Mentoring. Mr. P, welcome back to the show, sir. How did the big retreat go?
Oh man, Mark, it was really great. We got to meet a lot of our student traders in person, had lots of fun, learned lots of stuff, and looking forward to next year already.
You know, I heard through the grapevine, you did a lot of cool stuff, but I heard the key, the highlight for everybody of the multi-day experience was the nigh on 20-minute video that I sent in. Is that the case? Is that what you're hearing as well around the water cooler today?
Indeed. It was fantastic, Mark.
I heard comparisons to when the Beatles first touched down in the U.S. for the first time. You know, there was weeping, there was crying, there was rending of the clothing. It was just a big scene. So I want to see the video of people watching my video now. Sounds like a good time, sir.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
All right, before we get into all the madness, Mr. Dan, do you have your pickin' pants on? Because I'm going to need your help picking our winner for the June Pro Trading Crate. Are you ready, sir?
Oh, yes. All right, let's do it.
Even though I'm in the Southern studio, listeners, which is if I sound a little bit different, because I'm still in the Southern studio here, I am able to fire up our magic pickin' wheel. It's spinning now. The random number generator is spinning. So, Mr. P, when the spirit takes you, sir, you tell me to stop. I will stop said wheel, and then we shall see who our winner is of the magical, mystical, amazing June Pro Trading Crate. Have at it, sir, whenever the spirit strikes you.
All right, no whammies, no whammies. Stop.
Oh, right there. Bam. A little bit of the old push your luck or press your luck show. That's what that was. Yes, no whammies. Great that you bring that show back. That was a fun game show. But yes, all right. Who is that? Let us see. Oh, Mr. P, you have picked. Oh, good old Mackenzie. Haven't seen her name come up in a while. I do believe she won a while. She's one of our long-standing members. So we've had members who've been members for so long now, Dan, that they're winning a second Pro Trading Crate. So, I love it. I love seeing people hanging out in the Pro pretty much since the inception. Mackenzie, one of our crypto heads, she always sends in the crypto questions. So that's kind of fun. All right, Mackenzie, congratulations to you. Congratulations for winning a second Pro Trading Crate. You've been in the Pro long enough to keep your name in that many hats. Awesome. Congratulations to you. Our producers know your deal by now. Since you've already won one before, maybe we'll go a little crazy with something crazy. If you're trying to find some cool crypto stuff, because you do like yourself a little bit of the old crypto. So we'll see what we can put together for you. Our producers will be in touch. Speaking of being in touch, you guys can get in touch with us a lot of different ways, including if you like the show via whatever platform you get it on, leaving a review. Like this week, we have a 5-star review from Ben Ken. Ben Ken just said, he actually has a question. He says, do you think there are new options brokers coming? Well, you know what, Ben Ken? I always say don't ask your questions in the iTunes reviews because we don't get to them in a very timely fashion. But you know what? Because you took the time to rate and review us, the least we could do is answer your questions. So it's time for a little bit of the old mail call.
Mail call. Time to look at questions submitted by our listeners.
All right, everybody, let's get to it. A little bit of the old mail call. Before we get to all the other questions, Dan, we got to pay off this question here from Mr. 5-star Ben Ken. He has an interesting question. I was kind of just chatting about this with someone the other day, but I'd like to get your thoughts, obviously, as well. Ben Ken wants to know, do you think there are new options brokers coming? Obviously, we saw a great wave over a decade ago now, Dan. Of course, we saw Options Express come in and Thinkorswim and all the names a lot of people are familiar with. They've all been essentially gobbled up. Those two in particular are all part of one firm now. So it's kind of been a little bit slim pickings on the options startup front for new brokers. But you seeing anything interesting out there, Mr. Dan?
As far as new brokers go, not really, honestly. Nothing that looks to me to be like, the next big contender anyway. Every now and then you see a little guy pop up. I mean, I guess they all start as little guys, but there's nothing that was really looked super promising or interesting to me, which is strange. I would think that they'd kind of just keep coming so that they can so that those little fish can turn into somewhat bigger fish and get gobbled up again.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I did talk to some of the more recent startups, and some of them were pretty naked in their desire to get acquired. One of them was Gatsby, and they got their wish. They did get acquired by eToro not too long ago. I talked to the folks from eToro, and they do seem like they're trying to put some effort, trying to put some muscle behind the eToro platform. So it'll be interesting to see now what they do with that Gatsby going forward. So that's one you could pay attention to. eToro, traditionally more of an FX and crypto and basic equity type player. So adding an options layer on top of it could be interesting. Gatsby also had a kind of an interesting approach. They were trying to not just do the whole level 1, level 2, level 3 approval the second you hit the form, but actually have you make some trades and show what you know about options and then kind of open up access and functionality to you from there, which I think you could argue is a more holistic approach. I mean, a lot of brokers don't want to do that. They don't want to gate you. They want to give you all the bells and whistles right at the beginning. So I kind of laud them for that, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. We had the folks from eToro on the network not too long ago, their CEO, so check that out if you are intrigued. There were a couple others that were kind of floating around out there. It seems like a few of them may have fallen by the wayside now. So you're right, Dan. I don't outside of that one, I don't really see a ton of other players. In fact, we had other players like Ally who were big players. They of course, acquired the old Trade King, which became Ally Invest, and on and on. They have now essentially wound down their options business. So we're seeing the other way. We're seeing firms getting out of the option space, but not so much getting into it, which is weird, especially when you hear a little bit later, the numbers just came in from OCC. Maybe I'll break those down in a little bit, and it'd be weird to hear those numbers and hear folks getting out of the business, but that's kind of where we are, Mr. Dan. Since I'm talking about now, let's get to those really quick. Then I know folks want to get to your question of the week, Mr. Dan. They are champing at the bit to hear what you got in store for them. But the numbers literally just hit as we were recording the show, listeners, coming off of the holiday here, July 4th holiday. So it seems fun to break them down now because, Dan, we had another crazy rock'em sock'em month for June. You know, June, Dan, not historically a banger month for options, getting into those summer doldrums months out there. But we had a banger this past June, 962.6 million contracts. So yes, once again, we are threatening that 1 billion level. That's up 19.4% compared to June of last year. So nearly a 20% increase from June of last year. ADV, 44.7 million contracts, up nearly 9% compared to this time last year. A couple other highlights, index options up 38.1%. Gee, I wonder why that could be. Equity options up 23.3% from last year. And again, ADV up 8.7%. So Dan, people keep asking us, can this party continue? Can this options roller coaster of volume, can it continue? And it seems like so far the answer is yes. Even in June, Dan, does that surprise you?
No, I mean, I think the right answer is yes, because just like any other market in the more broad sense of that word, options are becoming a more mature industry, and people are learning about the risk management benefits of them and alpha benefits of them and leverage benefits and all that, and just unique opportunity benefits. And I mean, it makes perfect sense that it would continue growing into its own, really, not just growing for growth's sake, but kind of just growing up to be what it was born to be, if you will.
What it was born to be, indeed. So yeah, a banger month. Did you have that in your bingo card, listeners? I thought we might do a decent number. I wasn't sure if we could threaten that 1 billion level again. But again, also there's that wild card out there of that 0 DTE. So that's clearly a little bit of a nice tailwind just to kind of lift everything out there these days as well. So intriguing stuff. Those numbers just hitting as we were firing up the show today. So intriguing stuff. You heard it here first, listeners. But speaking of things you hear first, or really you hear only on this show, it is the much anticipated, ever insightful Dan Passarelli question of the week. What you got for us, sir?
Yeah, so this this sort of evolved. I was putting together a presentation for our retreat, and as I was and basically the presentation was on the really underappreciated power of directional butterflies. And as I was putting that together, I was using our Wingspread Genius scanner, which finds iron condors, butterflies. And every now and then I would see a directional typically condor. And so I don't know. I mean, I have the answer, but I'm just sort of making up the question here. Can you use condors to trade directionally? And in years past, I would have said, no, that's crazy. Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. But there are some instances where you can end up with a really wonderful risk-reward situation. So, yeah, I'm going to give a solid yes to that answer.
A solid yes, indeed. Speaking of yes or no, I think I'm going to put out a little fun flash poll just for the people who are voting in our fun question of the week right now, because I think you'll see why in a second, listeners. But yes, our actual question of the week this week, listeners. And Dan, we're here to ask the important questions. That's what we're here for on this show at the end of the day. And, a truncated holiday trading week, does it get more important than that, Dan? I ask you. So this week, we really put the fire to our listeners. We asked them the question everyone wants to know. We said, in the spirit of the season, what is your favorite food to eat on the 4th of July? We gave them 4 choices, Dan. Hot dogs, hamburgers, corn on the cob, or apple pie. Mr. Dan, where do you fall? And what do you think our audience is choosing in this seminal question of our age, sir?
Well, I will say that my favorite there would be hot dogs. That said, I did not have the opportunity to have any hot dogs this weekend. But we did do some grilling and some barbecuing. And I did make some elotes, which is one of my favorites.
Look, you getting fancy. What goes on a passarelli elote? What do you put on it?
Oh, man. So, you got to really char the corn on the grill, get it, where some of them are black kernels, and, but, not totally burnt. And then you just take a mixture of mayonnaise and a little sour cream, a little lime zest. I used some chili powder. Oh, geez, what pepper was that again? I believe it was ancho pepper chili powder, which was really good, gave an interesting taste to it. And then, once you slather all that on the corn, then you put some oh, shoot. What is that cheese called? My brain is still running a little bit slow.
Like cojita, something like that?
Yeah, it's cojita, I believe it is. Yeah. And that's the good stuff. That is the good stuff.
I like a good elote. All the dairy you're adding to it is losing me. But outside of that, it sounds good. But intriguing stuff. Yeah, I'm more of a hot dog guy. I think of 4th of July and hot dogs as well. But our audience, Dan, going hardcore for hamburgers, 50.7%, so over half choosing hamburgers, 31.9% choosing hot dogs, 11.6% going for the American staple of apple pie, Dan, so distant third. And then bringing up the rare corn on the cob, only 5.8%, Dan. So, yeah, intriguing results. Some of our pro members writing in. Age Delaquare says, I'll be in Las Vegas for the 4th. So since I'm not in Chicago, I'll be putting ketchup on my hot dogs. Which gets me to, I just put that out there as a little fun flash poll. Well, maybe we'll see the results right now, Dan. I said, is ketchup an acceptable condiment on a hot dog, yes or no? And right now it is tied, 50-50, Dan. So
tied. There's only one right answer to this question, Mark.
Which is yes, ketchup is delicious on all things.
What?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
You know what? This debate drives me crazy because a hot dog is not a sausage. If you give me an Italian sausage, I'll say, sure, put mustard on that. It is delicious. Or a Polish sausage, all that kind of stuff. A ketchup, just because it's a cased meat doesn't mean it's a sausage. It doesn't taste like a sausage. I would never put ketchup on an Italian sausage. On a hot dog, I encourage you to try it. It can be delicious, especially if you mix it in with a little bit of ketchup and other stuff. Then it's even more delicious.
Listeners, don't listen to this guy. He clearly has no idea what he's talking about.
This the heresies. This is why I'm an expat from the New England. I came to Chicago, so I could see the forest through the trees, and I could see what's delicious and what's just some sort of dogma that you guys adhere. I don't call my soda pop either. So there you go. Deal with that, you Midwestern yokel, you. Pariah Pants, another one of our pro members writing in says, what about beer?
Hey, there we go.
I don't know if beer is what you eat on the 4th of July, but hey, who am I to judge your dietary needs? Let's get back to our actual question of the week we were talking about recently on the show, Dan. We said, where is it here? There we go. We said VIX continues to drop while rates continue to go mostly up. It's challenging to generate income using options while the reward for cash are substantial, which raises the question, are you still selling covered calls in this environment? We had a whole episode about this. I have a feeling we'll be coming back to it. Because, Dan, our audience tying exactly, that's very strange, 30% exactly each for yes, I'm okay with selling calls and getting less income, and no, there's too much risk, I'm in cash, followed by 27% saying not enough income. So I suppose if you add those two together, 57% of the audience saying no, they are not writing covered calls anymore. And then 13% saying, yes, I am okay with it. I'm just selling closer to at the money. Dan, what are your thoughts? And does that surprise you, those results?
It does not really surprise me. I mean, I will put my flag in the ground here, and I am still doing covered calls. The characteristics of them change a little bit. And for the people, 30% of the people, I guess, who said too much risk, I'm in cash, why not sell like some just at the money calls or like slightly in the money calls? Then you hold on to your long-term investment, because it's almost the only time I do covered calls is, to augment a long-term investment. So you keep it. And then, if you're willing to be in cash anyway, you're just taking the biggest time premium you can get is the at the money. And if you get assigned, big deal, you're in cash, and then you can sell some just out of the money puts, So there's still really good opportunities. It's just, you just have to adapt and change with the market conditions.
Speaking of really good opportunities, this is a good opportunity to vote now, listeners, if you're listening live at Options, because Dan, Ketchup running away with it, 57.1% saying yes, 42.9% saying no. So our audience, I always knew our audience, deeply insightful people. There you go. Kick Dan and his ridiculous dogma to the curb. You put what you want on your hot dog. Maybe mayonnaise, I'm not down for it, but if you're into it, hey, who am I to judge, sir? I love how we don't judge on other things, but on hot dog condiments, we get very judgmental, Dan. You ever notice that?
Well, I mean, there are some things that are sacred, Mark.
Yes, there are some things that are inviolate. And to Dan, ketchup on a hot dog is one of those things. Mm-hmm. Let's go to Tommy, T-O-M-Y. I'm going to guess Tommy, maybe Tommy with one M. Either way, Tommy wants to know. Hey, guys. Well, hey, Tommy. This holiday seemed weird to me. Half day on Monday, and then we were off on Tuesday. That really threw me for a loop. Did you have similar issues? Any takeaways that you noticed that you could pass along to us noobs? Yeah, Dan, he does have a point. This was a weirder holiday weekend than we normally see. Normally what we'll see, listeners, you're heading into a long weekend. We usually have the Monday after the weekend off, hence the long weekend. And then in the week leading up to it, you might see people start taking positions off, unwinding things. Things get a little bit slow. You start seeing that weekend start coming out, maybe even on Thursday. And then on Monday, of course, nothing's happening. And then on Tuesday, you're back to the races again. This time was a little bit different. We had some of that going into the weekend on Friday, but we still had a session on Monday. You had a half session on Monday, and then we had a day off on Tuesday. So, yeah, it was a little bit weird. It kind of stretched things out a little bit more than maybe you might be used to seeing. Dan, did you, Tommy wants to know, did you have any issues with this? Did it throw you for a loop? Because it was a little weird. And any takeaways that you wanted to pass along to people as a result?
Oh, my goodness, man. I woke up in our subdivision here, garbage day is on Monday, and I woke up this morning. I was like, oh crap, I got to take the garbage out. I was like, wait a minute, it's Wednesday. What is even going on here? What day is it? So yeah, I've definitely had a little mental adjustment that needed to be made here.
Even from a traditional long weekend perspective, you're used to having that Monday off, right? So you can kind of go away and come back, and then you have that little kind of vestigial session on Monday. Did that kind of throw you for a loop, Dan?
Oh, yeah. I was like eating lunch on Monday, and I'm like, the market's closed. Oh, yeah, that's right. Wait, what's going on?
Yeah, you thought maybe you could put something on and to kind of just forget about it until Tuesday, but no, you actually have to pay attention to it and babysit a little bit on Monday. So yeah, Tommy, I don't know if there's any real takeaways. This is not something we normally encounter. Normally, the long holiday weekends are the Monday off or maybe the Friday. But usually it is that consecutive period for a reason. They don't like to have the markets closed for that long. Hence that little kind of stub session there on Monday. So I think for a lot of people, the takeaway from that is if you don't want to have to deal with that, maybe you're traveling, you don't have time to babysit it, or maybe you're like Dan, you're still hungover from your big retreat and you can't be bothered to fire up your screens early in the morning on Monday morning, whatever the case may be, then maybe you take your stuff off heading into the long weekend and you go out, you have your long weekend, you have fun with your family, you put some delicious ketchup on your hot dog, which Dan is running away with it, 70% now saying yes. So the
70%.
audience rallying to my cause, Dan, loving the taste of some ketchup on their cased meat, saying, if I could interpret this for the audience, saying, dare I say it, this might be the most delicious thing that you could ever do. So I'm just looking at these numbers. It's hard to argue with that, right? So
you might as well put like chocolate syrup on it. Like, just what could be more ridiculous?
Marshmallow fluff. You know, the list is endless. What you can put on a delicious cased meat. Peanut butter on a hot dog, anyone? Hey, who am I to judge? I don't judge your hot corn topping, or popcorn. Listen to me. Your hot dog. I don't judge your hot dog toppings. It's not like I'm a drunk one coming in from the long holiday retreat now. But yeah, Tommy. Yeah, no real takeaways. I think the biggest one is that if you don't want to deal with that stub session on Monday, then just leave stuff off. Obviously, don't go slinging your 0 day because you're going to have to pay attention to it for at least that half of the session. Speaking of 0 day, Dan, that gets us to this similar question here from Craig. Along the same line, seemed like he was a little bamboozled by the weird weekend as well. Craig wants to know, has long holiday weekend trading changed now with everyone trading 0 DTE? And, that is an interesting point, Dan. It used to be people would kind of take stuff off on, Wednesday night, Thursday, and be done. Now, of course, if they did that, they're missing those oh-so-valuable sessions on Thursday and Friday when everyone wants to sling all their 0 DTE, let alone the little nubs session on Monday that maybe they want to trade as well. So it does kind of change the game. People are a little bit more glued to their screens now, trading the 0 day stuff. They want to be there for session after session. So I think maybe one takeaway, and I'll have to look at the numbers to see if this is the case, but maybe we could start seeing maybe a little bit more paper on these sessions perhaps than we normally would encounter as well, with everyone slinging the 0 day. What are your thoughts, Dan? How does this 0 day revolution, how does it change the long holiday weekend trading we're all used to?
I think I didn't trade any 0 days this time around, just because, well, for various reasons. I was basically catching up after our retreat. But I don't think it would change it that much because, if it's a full session, like a full day session, 1 day is 1 day, and it doesn't matter if you're off the day before or off the next day. It just doesn't matter. On the Monday shorter day, it makes it a little bit more interesting because the day's 3 hours shorter. And so therefore you probably have a little bit of like fractional theta worked in there, and you have to either sell a little closer to the money or you have to just accept less premium. But, then there's less time to deal with as well. So I don't know. I feel like when you're playing a game like that, I think that these holiday weekends and such don't come into play all that much.
It comes into play, though, Dan. The delicious taste of ketchup on a hot dog, 73%, it continues to climb.
Do you have like your whole family typing it in there or something? Like, this is clearly a farce.
I'm just glued to this poll result, so this is fascinating to me. I always knew our audience, deeply insightful people with also clearly great taste. And now we have verified that yet again. Oh, I love it. I love everything about it. And the fact that this is all heresy to Dan makes it that much better, listeners. So make sure you get in there and vote yes for ketchup. If for no other reason than to tweak your nose at Dan. Let's go out to this question.
God.
Apparently, the entire city of Baltimore is writing to us, Dan. Either that or someone named Baltimore. But Baltimore wants to know. They say, Ari, your talk about straddles on the show, it seems like you aren't keen on buying them. Well, not exactly, but we'll see what the rest of we have to say is, and we'll clarify it. What if you sell legs against it, depending on movement? So you buy an at-the-money straddle, an XYZ for $5. XYZ rallies 2%, and you sell the now at-the-money strike for $2.50. Wait a bit for it to retreat below the original starting point, and then sell the now at-the-money put for $2.50. Bam! Free straddles for all, baby. like how he puts this. Seriously, though, what are your thoughts on this approach to using the stock's momentum to leg into iron condors when buying at the money straddles? All right, Dan, this is kind of interesting. What he's kind of referring to, maybe without realizing, or she, we don't know, maybe, or the entire town of Baltimore. We don't know. What they are referring to is effectively a little bit of the old gamma scalping, what we used to do on the trading floor all the time. This is how we paid for our long premium positions. We would take advantage of the momentum that you're talking about here, and we would usually sell stock because, of course, we had a little bit more favorable setup for slinging a lot of underlying than your average retail trader would. So this would certainly be a viable way to go about it as well. In your case, instead, legging into that upside call vertical. I don't know if you're going to get as favorable of a level as you put here in your example, Baltimore, of getting $2.50, then $2.50 again, and then as you put it, bam, your straddle is free. I wish it worked that way. Not probably going to line up that way, but this is certainly one way you could go about it. Obviously, the necessity for this is that you get that movement. You need a little bit of a rally, then a little bit of a retreat, and then vice versa, in order to, and keep that movement going in order to pay for this thing, because the death knell of any long straddle position is if the stock just sits there. And if that happens, then unfortunately you're not really going to have the opportunity to leg into your iron condor. But this is one way you want to go about gamma scalping, and you can get things to line up. I don't hate it. Mr. Dan, what do you have to say for the entire city of Baltimore? They want to know if they could leg into iron condors, sir.
Yeah. So, I mean, I look at what Mark was saying about it being basically gamma scalping, and it is, that's a really good way to look at it. But, that said, it's not something that you can count on, of course. There's some pros to this technique and there's some cons to it. So, you're not always going to be able to do that, which I think is obvious, right? If you knew it was just going to go up and then back down, you don't even have to do that. Just if it goes up, sell the call that you have and just keep the put, right? You can do that too. And I have worked with some of our student traders on doing just that. Like if you do a 10-lot straddle, you can end up selling out a fraction of those calls to get back to delta neutral when it goes up, and then selling some of the puts when it goes back down to get back to delta neutral. But, the one thing about sort of truncating it, which is how I would look at that, you're basically rolling into a butterfly, right? But basically a purchased iron butterfly instead of a more conventional sold iron butterfly. And so what you end up doing is you end up giving up one of the real benefits of straddles, which is that if there's just a big massive move, you really cash in. Whereas, when you sell that higher strike call, you're limiting your upside, which may be okay if you're looking for some oscillation, as I like to call it. That is a strategy that I don't poo-poo. I've used it before, but typically not. Typically, I would just put on the straddle, take off the straddle. That's it. Unless there's just a massive move, then put on the straddle. If it goes up massively, just sell all the calls and keep the puts that are worth pennies. And it doesn't matter if you get out of them.
Yeah, I think I should clarify some of what he says at the beginning of the question, too, because he says we don't like straddles. And we don't hate them. They're just very specific use case things. You've talked about them recently on the show, Dan, liking them. It's just a question of they're very specific, and it has to be, as Dan mentioned, an underlying, if you're going to buy a straddle, you think this thing's exploding. A good example of when we were talking about a lot of long straddles on the show, take a guess, listeners. Q1 of 2021, yeah, there was a lot of straddles talk on the show then. So they can work. As Dan mentioned, when you're putting them on, you're expecting really a banger session. And that's why if I was going to do this, I would probably go either the straddle, as Dan's pointing out, because you're looking for some explosive move, or I would put on the iron condor at the outset. I'd much rather have it set up and designed the way I want it than doing this momentum thing. But I suppose if you are going to do it, this can work. But I would probably do it either the straddle or the iron condor at the outset rather than kind of legging in. But just realize, Baltimore, if you are doing this, it's kind of like a bit of a poor man's gamma scalp. And I suppose if that works for you, who are we to judge? Just like we would never judge our audience, Dan. They have retreated a little bit, 68.8% now for Ketchup. So it's come off about 4.2%, Dan. So they're still firmly in the favor of Ketchup, though. So just keep that in mind, sir.
Getting back to some sanity here. Reverting to normalcy.
Our audience, far too smart to buy into your dogmatic mustard nonsense. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go here. I like this handle. Fast Eddie. Fast Eddie wants to know. What does Fast Eddie want to know? Fast Eddie wants to know, is it worth my time selling puts right now with VIX at a freaking 12! Exclamation point. 12, damn it, he says. Another exclamation point. Then he puts in parentheses, sorry for my language. I love our listeners. You are the best bunch. Let me just correct you there. Who is it? Fast Eddie. By the way, good handle out there. VIX is at a whopping 14 now, damn it. So there you go. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. So a little bit different, but I get your point. Yes, VIX has been eroding for some time, looking pretty anemic. Listen to our show like This Week in Futures Options, where we break down a lot of the volatility across a wide variety of assets, and you'll see that equities are not alone. A lot of asset classes are really starting to look anemic from a vol perspective. There are a few exceptions, nat gas, some crypto, a few others. But really, it's hard to find a lot of vol out there these days. So if you're looking for a place to sell super juicy puts, you may be looking for a bit right now. But that said, we just talked about long straddles. Selling puts, it's the same thing. It's all situational. If you find a name with a level that you feel is attractive where you'd like to get the stock and you feel the reward for selling that put in terms of premium is worth it to you, then by all means, you could still do it. VIX be damned. At the end of the day, if you're doing it in single names, it's all going to depend on what's going on in that name. If you're doing it in very active meme stock type name, you might still get yourself a fair amount of juice out there. So again, it is very situational right now. So I wouldn't just look at the VIX and say, well, this strategy is off the table. I just think it's worth taking a second look and making sure you're getting paid enough for doing it. Otherwise, maybe you keep your powder dry. So that's certainly a good thing. It's good for the VIX to give you pause in that scenario, but it shouldn't be a blanket condemnation. You cannot entertain this strategy whatsoever. Dan, what do you have to say here for Fast Eddie, who wants to say, is it worth selling puts now that VIX is at a freaking 12, sir? A 12!
Yeah, it's a little more frustrating, but yeah, I mean, I've got an offer in on some puts right now, and in a market like this, I mean, hey, look, first of all, it could just keep going, forever in theory, but I don't know. I feel like there's a reasonable chance it's, probably not a major pullback. That's the RSI says we're probably not due for a major pullback, but maybe a little bit of one in some names. And, that oscillation gives you a pretty good opportunity to put in an offer to sell some puts because, like above where they're trading now. Because if the stock goes down, those puts increase in value by delta, but you also probably get a little bit of a bump in the implied volatility too. So your effective delta is actually bigger than what your actual delta tells you. So, I mean, bottom line, moral to the story, yeah, there are still definitely some good put selling opportunities. You just got to think of them a little different, too.
All right, Mr. Dan, that music means we have come to the end of another fun sojourn. Looks like we have some dissension amongst the ranks, even in our own staff. Some folks trying to tweet out in support of mustard as a condiment, sir. I don't like any of that. I'm going to put the ban hammer down on that. Anybody on my team who's tweeting in support, using our account to tweet in support of mustard, they will be deleted, sir. I'm just putting that out there. I will use my dictatorial powers on that front.
East Coast carpetbagger. Oh my God.
We're starting to trend in the wrong direction. I'm not like we got up to 73%. Now it's coming. I think you've been whispering that I think you've been rallying your cronies, Dan, because we're coming in at 57.1%. Still firmly well over half saying yes, 42.9% saying no. This one's flying fast and furious. It's only been up for like 15 minutes, Dan, but folks clearly have a lot to say.
I mean, see if they like.
Well, good.
See if they like ketchup on their cornflakes.
No, hey, I'm not going to judge people's toppings. I'm not here to judge your toppings, Dan. Unlike you Midwesterners, strictly dogmatic in your views of what can be on what. I'm open. I'm fluid with my toppings. Let me just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Mr. Dan. Again, so you'll have to, I think, take this one on the chin. Our audience, it's not done yet, but our audience has clearly spoken in favor of they put whatever the heck they want on their cased meat, goddammit, and you'll like it. Mm-hmm. All right, Mr. Dan. So I'm guessing at the MTM retreat there were no ketchup hot dogs to be had for the people?
No, there was, well, first of all, if we had hot dogs, there would be no frickin' ketchup. But we do it right. We have some pretty good meals there, and none of this, tuna sandwich in a cardboard box. We had some. What did we have? We had some fajitas. We had some Italian. We had a wine reception. We know how to do it.
Good stuff. Well, if folks want to participate in future retreats or just check out what you got cooking in the land of the old where should they go? What should they do, sir?
Well, come on over to markettaker.com, and I'd love to help you out any way I can. So you know where to find me, and we're there for you.
There you go. Check them out. markettaker.com. Make sure you tweet at him at Dan Passarelli on Twitter. Don't forget the _. And make sure you let him know your detailed thoughts on ketchup as a viable condiment for all of your cased meat products. He will love to hear it. He will entertain your thoughts and engage you in a lively and spirited debate at Dan _Passarelli is where to find him.
I will just block them. That's it.
Insta-block.
In fact, I mean, some things you can't compromise on.
I think Dan has already blocked me since we started doing this show because I've been haranguing him on the very, very contentious topic. It's not contentious according to our audience. You have spoken, and it is well over half, the clear majority of you saying, you know what, put whatever the heck you want on your cased meats as long as it is delicious. This show, I don't know if you can call this show delicious, but hopefully informative, engaging, entertaining, all sorts of fun, educational out there. That is going to do it for us on the old OBC from the Southern Studio today. Back with your usual slate of shows tomorrow. We got Options Boot Camp episode 1 for the week. Usually episode 2 on Thursday, but episode 1 with the Flow Master should be fun. And everybody else, followed by This Week in Futures options after that. If you want to hear me run down all of that goodness from the vol perspective across a variety of assets, that's where you got to go. And then, of course, Friday vol views, and then, of course, options oddities also from their Southern studio. Congratulations again to Mackenzie for winning our Pro Trading Crate for the month of June. If you want to get your name in the hat for the July Trading Crate, only one place to go, listeners, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. And we'll see you back here next Education Wednesday, another episode of Options Boot Camp. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.